Welcome to Module 4A. In this module, we're going to look at industry analysis and market analysis as it affects a new startup business or a new venture within an existing business. Again, the intrapreneurial aspects. But in either case, whether this is a totally new company or whether it is a new product line or a new offering within an existing company, you have to take a look at the industry that it's involved in and the market that may or may not exist. Here are our objectives for this module. The textbook doesn't talk much about Porter's 5 forces, also known as Porter's 5 factors in some instances. But it's a very important concept for industry analysis, and I'm going to spend a fair amount of time talking about that and going through the details. The 5 factors are listed there, and I'm going to talk about each of those in turn. Then we will go into market analysis, trying to see what potential the market has and how we might approach it, and looking at market research, both primary research and secondary research, and what that means. And lastly, we'll talk about niche markets, because today and for the foreseeable future, small entrepreneurial efforts, startup efforts, need to find a niche. Coming in with a broad offering in an established industry or a marketplace in which there's a lot of competition is difficult. It's much more probable of success, or there is a higher probability of success, rather, if you find a niche, something unique, something a need that hasn't been filled, and we talked about that in prior modules, and you go after that niche market. Well, the first question is, what's industry analysis? What is an industry? As you can see here, it's a group of firms producing a similar product or service, but again, the definitions are kind of fuzzy. Not everyone agrees what is an industry. How big is it? Are there sub-industries under it? The electronics games industry. Some people have the position that it's really multiple industries, different facets of electronic games, be they dedicated to a certain platform or a type. Similarly, airlines. The airline industry. Is it really one industry, or is it a bunch of smaller industries? You have nationwide carriers, you have regional carriers, and you have small local airlines that all have different business models and don't necessarily compete with each other. So again, you have to use some common sense there to define what is the industry that you're going after. And of course, industry analysis is taking a look and figuring out whether that industry is worth going into. What we want to do is get enough knowledge of the environment. That means knowing what the industry is, how it works, what its characteristics are. We want to look at where the industry is going. Is it growing? Is it declining? We're going to talk about a product life cycle and look at the different phases of that life cycle. And we want to look at the competition. And again, there is always competition. Even if you have a new idea, again, somebody is out there already, probably with something similar or perhaps a substitute. Why is it important? Well, here's what some of the textbooks say, and you need to know the ins and outs. Again, you need to know how the industry works, what walk the walk and talk the talk. Know how it's structured. Know where your competition, where your suppliers are, how you can deal with them, how you can deliver your product or service. Have to understand it. Know the business that you're getting into. And find out to see if there are niche markets available. Here's the 3 key questions that you have to look at in starting to do an industry analysis. Can you get in it? Is it realistic for you to start there? And from this aspect, we're going to look at barriers to entry, barriers to exit. Second is there sub-markets in there where you can innovate, make changes, improve things? And can you get a position in that industry? And the third question, can you get a position in that industry that will set you apart from some of the companies that perhaps are not doing as well as they should be in that company? What innovative ideas do you have to bring to the table, bring to the industry, and bring to the marketplace that you can do it better, cheaper, faster, better quality, whatever is going to set your company apart from the rest of the pack? Porter's 5 forces or 5 factors was developed by Michael E. Porter from Harvard back initially in 1979, 1980, that kind of time frame. I was very honored and proud to have taken several courses up at the Harvard Business School with Dr. Porter and some of his proteges. And when this was fairly new, this would have been back in the mid-'80s. So it was a fairly new approach to things at that point in time. But it's become very institutionalized, and again, almost everyone has adopted it. Why this text gives it only a small amount of commentary is beyond me, but we will look at it. Well, one of the first factors that we have to look at is threats of new entrants. Again, barriers to entry, barriers to exit, and we're going to go into this a bit. Bargaining power of buyers, bargaining power of suppliers, threat of substitutes, and rivalry. Those are the 5 factors. I'm going to look at each of those. Here's another way of looking at the methodology or model. Again, new entrants. We also look at threat of entry, barriers to entry, barriers to exit, because that all affects whether or not people want to come into the industry. Here's what we use the model for. And as the slide says, if you fill out the form on the next slide and it looks like several of the threats to industry profitability are high, you might say, gee, I don't know whether I really want to go after this. Is this such a wise business opportunity? Maybe there are better things to be done. Again, here we look at the attractiveness of the industry, threat of substitutes, is it low, is it medium, high, and so forth. and kind of a checklist. Rather simplistic way of looking at it, but it gets the point across. Here's a flow chart of how the model works. Is this a realistic place for a new venture, a new opportunity to come in? The answer is no, then go look at something else. If it's yes, again, the three questions that were posed a few slides back have to be asked. Can you come up with a superior business model? Can you come up with a unique position that sets you apart? Or can you do things better? Better suppliers, better materials, lower cost. For example, Walmart. Walmart has taken the cost out of the retail business and operates at, very, very streamlined, very efficiently. They were able to capture market share because they did things better. Combination of a superior business model and diminishing the factors such as distribution costs, storage costs, middlemen that suppressed or reduced industry profitability. Taking a look at industries tend to fall into a number of categories, 5 basically. There are emerging industries, something new, and here you've got the opportunity of being a first mover, new kid on the block, being able to get in there, make profits, get market share, get a brand image, and establish the industry. There are other types of industries that are called fragmented, large numbers of firms. Here, usually the business opportunity is to consolidate. You saw that during the early 1900s. You didn't see it, nor did I, but history tells us that in the early 1900s, the automobile industry was like that. And companies like Dodge, Plymouth, Chrysler, consolidated under Chrysler. Of course, Oldsmobile, Buick, and many of the other companies, Chevrolet, consolidated under GM. Even in the tractor industry, I don't know the names of the two companies. One was, of course, John Deere, but early on, the story is that they were essentially two tractor companies that were competing fiercely with each other, and they suddenly decided, hey, if we consolidate it and combine, we own the industry. And that's exactly what they did. There are also mature industries. Mature industries are either have slow growth or no growth in demand. It's a replacement kind of industry. I would put forth that I believe the computer industry, which is what I'm familiar with from the past, the computer industry is a mature industry now. We're not seeing a whole lot of new people buy computers. Basically, it's a replacement market for more powerful machines and more storage. Again, the progress of software is fueling that because the new software requires more powerful processors and more storage. So there is a reason for innovation to continue in terms of process innovation and product, and maybe the aftermarket. Declining industries, we'll talk about a decline of a product. What happens when your product is no longer important, but maybe it's a niche market. VCRs, okay, not a big demand for them these days. In fact, trying to find one is kind of hard. But there is a niche market out there. You're seeing niche markets for LP records, turntables for LP records, to convert them via USB to digitize them. So there is there are these niche markets to go after. So just because it's an old industry doesn't mean it's necessarily out of business. And the fifth is global industries. And these are typically your large companies, although in an entrepreneurial effort, you could go global with niche markets that have an interest that transcends local area, particularly if it's something that is easily deliverable. Craft items, hobby items, typically are niche markets that are global in nature. That people will buy kits to make model airplanes, model trains, things like that, and they're not all necessarily in the United States. There's a global market for this kind of thing. And again, you have to look at strategies for that. Coming back, we're back to the model itself and going to take a look at each of those pieces now. The first thing that we have to talk about is the threat of new entrants. If the industry is highly profitable, lots of people want to get in. And the more people that come in, competition increases, prices go down, profitability declines. So what existing companies in the industry try to do is to erect barriers to entry and barriers to exit. Here's some of the barriers to entry. Economies of scale. Depending upon what you're looking at, the kind of industry you're looking at, it may cost a lot of money and a lot of investment to get started to compete. An easy example is semiconductor manufacturing. If you are going to manufacture your own semiconductor chips, you need a big, expensive factory, very high-tech equipment. Not easy to find the funding and set up that kind of process, that kind of manufacturing facility. Product differentiation is an entry. If the product is not well defined, if the products or the product differences aren't well defined, and it's a commodity, all right, easy to produce and available, in a lot of different forms, that could be a problem. On the other hand, from the different angle, profit differentiation, it also has to be looked at from the fact that there is a multitude of products out there, and how big is the market for different types of or variants of this product. Barriers to entry obviously include capital requirements, need money. Can you get access to the distribution channels? That sometimes can be difficult, particularly in things like a convenience store market, the 7-Eleven, the Quick Check. Can you get your new product into that distribution chain? Can you get them to stock it? Can you get the wholesaler to stock it and deliver it? Even in supermarkets, if you come out with a new soft drink or one of these new power drinks, sports drinks, you may find it difficult getting shelf space, getting supermarkets and stores to want to give you space for your product, because essentially it's going to take space away from something else that's already there. Intellectual property that we're going to talk about a little later in the course is a barrier to entry. If you have patents, copyrights, trademarks, these are legal barriers to somebody coming in. If somebody has a product already patented, you may not be able to produce that product because of their patent protection. Certain industries require licenses, such as the radio and TV broadcasting. You have to have a license from the FCC, so that's a problem. The companies that came in early, the first movers, emerging industry, they may have captured market share. They may have gotten an image that is tough to overcome. They may be equated with the product and the consumer's name, so you may have a hard time getting in there. And lastly, the passion of the team. A well-run company with a strong team and a strong motivation, kind of hard to compete against. So these are all things that keep potential newcomers out of the market. Similarly, you have exit barriers. And the idea of an exit barrier is, if this doesn't work out, can we and our investors get out of this thing and recover? Again, the tougher it is to get out of the business, that makes it dissuades, discourages companies from coming into the business if it's going to be tough to get out if they aren't successful. Again, semiconductors, you build this huge fabrication plant to build state-of-the-art chips, computer chips or processor chips of some sort, may be very specialized, and you may not be able to sell it to anybody. You may not be able to get your investment back, and your investors may not get their money back. Union rules, particularly outside of the United States, for example, Europe France and Germany have some very stringent rules about buyout packages. If you shut down, what it's going to cost you. You may have environmental issues to deal with if nobody buys the business. Again, these are disincentives to coming into the business. And then thirdly, you may have obligations, particularly if you're in a business-to-business environment. Your equipment, whatever you sold, may have a long-term warranty. You may have to continue to service it. The mainframe computer industry went through that when a number of the companies, the older mainframe companies, went out of business. They just couldn't shut down their operations. They had to get somebody to buy it or take it over, perhaps at no cost, in order to do the continued servicing, maintenance, upgrades that were necessary, that they were contractually obligated to. Well, after we look at the barriers to entry or threat of new entrants, both the entry and exit barriers, the second force is, what is the power of suppliers? If there are few suppliers of the materials that you need, those suppliers can basically control the profitability of the industry and consequently the profitability of your company. They can raise prices, reduce the quality, limit the supply, and that becomes a problem. On the other hand, if there are many suppliers, that is an advantage to you as an entrepreneur, because you can shop around and get the best price, the best delivery, the best financing terms for the materials that you need. Another aspect of the power of suppliers is switching costs. What is involved in switching from one supplier to another? If the supply that you use is basically a commodity, oil, coal, corn, if you're in the food industry, you can get them from lots and lots of sources, and switching suppliers isn't much of a problem. However, if it's a more of a technical kind of product or supply, such as, say, power supplies, disk drives, you name it, lots and lots of technological stuff, changing from one supplier to another may be hard, and therefore the supplier has more power over you because he or she knows that you really can't easily switch, and therefore they can raise the prices and kind of control the situation. Brand, in a similar fashion, are substitute supplies available? Can you can you find something else? If you can't get this, what you need, can you get something else? Brand identity from the term of the supplier is important. Intel inside on your computer. Intel has a good brand name. They, as a supplier, can charge more for their product than, say, their nearest competitor, AMD. Their brand image brings something to the table. Microsoft, same thing. All right. There is also the threat of forward integration, and basically that means simply that will your supplier become your competitor? Will they say, look, instead of just supplying pieces to Bob's company, why don't we make it ourselves and cut Bob out of the action? That's always something that you have to look at. From the other side of the coin, we have to look at bargaining power of buyers. And again, here, are there few or many? In the consumer marketplace, typically the buyers don't have a lot of power. There's a lot of them out there. We'll see in the marketing piece that, and customer service piece rather, that consumers can cause you some problems these days, particularly with the web. But in general, we are looking more in a business-to-business in buyers. Question. In the tire industry, who are the biggest buyers of automobile tires? Consumers? Not really. The biggest single buyers, or set of buyers, of automobile tires are the car manufacturers. All right. Question, and I don't know the answer to this, but question. If you think back to the problems that Ford and Firestone had with the Ford Explorers and the Firestone tires, did Ford at the time, Ford was trying to hold the line on price increases for their cars to stay competitive. Did they put pressure on Firestone to give them a better deal, a lower price on tires? It's never really come out, but it's one theory. In return, what did Firestone possibly do? Did they cut back on quality of materials? Did they cut back on quality control procedures? Don't know. But the result was some severe problems for Ford and Firestone. If the product is unique, it can attract or demand a higher price. Commodities, again, coal, oil, corn, are tougher. One might argue that laptop computers are perhaps a commodity these days. There's very few differences, and you wind up competing. The buyers wind up looking for price. Although brand identity is often important, as we'll see in marketing, branding or your brand name can be very, very important, give you an image. Will the buyer, the business-to-business buyer, will they essentially go into competition with you? Will they integrate backwards so that they don't need you as a supplier? Can happen. Substitutes. There are always substitutes. Look at again, a function, not form. All right. What is a substitute for Federal Express? Well, first thing that comes to mind is UPS, or maybe overnight mail from the Postal Service. But the fax machine can be a substitute. Electronic mail, the web, can transmit documents just as easily, in fact, in many cases a lot faster than FedEx. So again, you have to think widely as to what the substitutes are. What are the switching costs? Again, if you change from one way of doing things, or the buyer switches from one way of doing things, switching from FedEx to UPS is easy. Just have to get some different supplies, get their envelopes and their packages. Frequently you see their drop-off boxes side by side, so switching costs are low. It may be hard to substitute if you have a product, or if you have a product that the buyer has been using and has integrated into its business. You want to build switching costs. You, as the vendor, want to make it difficult for the buyer to change from your company to another. And again, you've got to look at the entire value-added chain. It's not just the product, it's the service, it's the brand image. In looking at substitutes, one example is prescription medicines. Although generics are coming into play here, but when a prescription drug first comes out, it's protected and is very, very profitable. So the pharmaceutical industry has typically been very profitable. The advent of generics, of course, is biting into that and reducing their profits, as we're seeing. The fifth factor is rivalry. If it's a slow growth industry, the competitors that are in it are competing over what market share is there. There's not a whole lot to go around. If it's a real growth industry, there's probably enough business to support lots of companies, and everybody's happy. But when it slows down, then you start competing with each other and competing on price and service and warranties and things like that. Low switching costs, again. Coke versus Pepsi, very easy to switch. If you have low entry barriers, low exit barriers, you've got problems. Companies that can very easily come into the market. Consulting business. What do you need to start a consulting business? Nothing really. Some letterhead and some business cards. There isn't really a licensing for consulting in most areas, and makes it easy for people to come into the industry. Makes it they try it. If it doesn't work, they exit the industry. They go out of business. But in the meantime, they've caused a lot of chaos, a lot of problems for the existing companies. And again, if the product differences are low, then maybe you're competing on price and delivery and warranty. Well, let's take a look at market analysis. And from an industry standpoint, and we're going to look at specifically at market, you have to look at the attractiveness, the timeliness, and whether or not you can find a niche market. One of the key concerns is how attractive is that industry? Is it a growth industry? All right. Is it profitable? Is it someplace where we want to be, as opposed to a declining, stagnant industry with low profits, like the automobile industry at this point in time? You should have, in prior courses, heard the term window of opportunity. Is there an available space to get into, and is this a good time? Are customers buying? Are the companies that are in business making money, which is hopefully what you want to do as well? Window of opportunity usually is defined as the time from when you start until you deliver your first product, actually get into the marketplace. How long is it going to take, and can you capture market share? Likewise, if it's a new product or service, should you try and capture a first mover advantage? Later in the course, we'll talk about the pros and cons of that. There are always advantages to being a first mover, but as one of the marketing posters say, that as far as first movers, the early pioneers took a lot of arrows. There's a lot of downside to being the first one in the marketplace. Here are the characteristics of attractive industries. Industries that you would want to get into. One of the things you want to do in looking at that industry now from an industry or marketing analysis, do some marketing research. And basically, marketing research says, who is our customer? How many of them are out there? What can we charge? How do we get it to the customer? And what's the most effective way to reach those people? 300 million people in the United States alone. It's going to be impossible to reach every one. You got to figure out how to get your product or service out there. Steps. Figure out where you want to go. What do you want to find out from your research? Again, the example of the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, who said, when Alice said she didn't know where she wanted to go, the Cheshire Cat said, then it doesn't matter which road you take. Figure out what you're looking for, what you're trying to define, the size of the market, the characteristics of your customer, those kinds of things. Gather data from secondary sources and primary sources, and finally analyze the results. Here's the difference between primary research or primary sources and secondary. Primary research, well, let's take secondary research first. Secondary research is stuff that's out there, on the web, in books, available. Advantage? It's cheap. It's there. It exists. The problem with secondary research is that it could be stale. Even by the time it gets on a website, the market may have changed. It may not be relevant to your particular niche. How valuable is a book or a website giving nationwide statistics on car washes and costs and profitability? I would think that's going to vary drastically from area to area, from region to region. Not particularly relevant, not particularly important to your small new business. But again, it is cheap and it is useful. Primary research is stuff you go collect yourself or have somebody do it. Having the kids sit at the car wash to figure out outside an existing car wash to count to see how many cars come through in a month or on an average day. Taking a survey by phone, in person, to find out what do customers want. Here's a list of sources of secondary research. There's lots of good stuff out there, as you can see. A lot of this is available at the county libraries, okay, or the county college libraries are typically have a good business section. Morris County College Library, CCM, County College of Morris, Essex County College, good business libraries, reference libraries for this kind of information. One of the things you want to find out is what's called variables or demographics is term. There's also psychographics is a term that's used these days. And you'll see here that this is the kind of data you're gathering to figure out what your customer and market looks like. Demographic variables, as you can see there, sex, age, income. You gathered that to find out, again, what your customer looks like. When you're an existing business, once you've gotten started and sold some product or service, you can collect this data pretty easily. And usually, if you haven't already seen that, whenever you fill out one of those register your product or register your warranty cards, it has that kind of information on it, or those kinds of questions. Technically, you don't have to register your product, particularly if it's a consumer product, in order to get the warranty. What they're doing is asking for feedback to, again, find out who bought it, what kind of income range do they make, are they male, female, age group, and so forth. But be careful. Not everybody in the same income group, for example, is the same. People in, say, the $100,000 to $150,000 per year income group could be a young professional in business, industry, insurance, brokerage, that kind of thing. Could be a doctor just starting out. Could be a plumber or electrician, a blue collar type person, but one who's very tradesman. Different people, different buying habits. One might be interested in white wine, the other might be interested in Budweiser. So be careful of making hard decisions based on things like demographics. Behavioral variables, lifestyle, cars, I believe, are sold on behavioral variables. Image, you don't buy a Jaguar or a BMW because of its economy value. You buy it because of its image and the image that you want to project. Geography, sure. Are you urban? Is your market urban or suburban? Regional? Not a big market if you're in the building or selling snow blowers. Not a big market in Miami and Southern California. So again, you have to take that into account. But again, companies are testing the market. Tractor Supply Company, which was a typically rural company, has started moving into the suburban area and doing quite well. Obviously, the product attributes, and we're going to talk about product strategy as the course moves on. Consumer, we also have to, we look and segment the market, all right? Again, using those marketing variables that we just talked about, we can relate that to different kinds of markets, consumer and industrial and so forth. And here are the factors and variables that play into what the customer looks like, what their buying habits are going to be, those kinds of things for our market analysis. In the business to business or industrial, again, same thing but a little different. Psychological, here we're looking at the customer, not you. Is your customer an industry leader? Do they have a reputation to uphold? If so, dependability and reliability may be important to them. Are they an industry leader? Are they on the front edge? Or are they basically somebody who wants to compete only on cost? That could cause you problems if you are trying to sell a profitable leading edge product. Even in the government marketplace, you have to look at things. What kind of agency is it? Are they a progressive agency? Are they trying to be go-getters and stay in the public spotlight? Or again, do they have a low budget and basically looking to buy the cheapest thing that they can get by with? These are the things you have to look at when you're determining who your customers are. The last thing we want to look at in this module is the niche market. And as the chart says, it's a slice of a bigger market. And for the new firm, you can get in there without competing against the major competitors, a specialized product, innovation again. So a niche market is the place to go. Well, we can talk a little bit real quickly about niche markets. You may have heard of John Nesbitt. He wrote a book called The Global Paradox. And the idea of the global paradox is that markets are becoming larger, but they're becoming also smaller. And little companies can compete well in these global markets. The bigger the market, the more important the small player is the paradox. And the idea is that you can take a product or a service and go global with it to a very, very thin slice of the marketplace. For example, 1950s music. Okay, I happen to be a fan of that. You don't find it on FM. Well, you could go wider geographically, and some radio stations are syndicating consolidating and they're doing satellite feeds with a very narrow customer profile. Look at satellite radio, where you have the 40s channel, the 50s channel, the 60s channel, 70s channel, and the 80s channel, and so forth. Or you could take another approach and take a very thin slice of geography and become a very local, very focused geographically with a broader range. Again, what you want to do is look at the solution, look at what you're providing to the customer, not the technology. Another one of John Nesbitt's books was Megatrends. And one of his premises is that for every high-tech innovation, you have a backlash or a high-touch backlash. Car stereos is an example. If you think back to the 1990s, a lot of these car stereos had lots and lots of little buttons on them that did things. Tough to work and very tough to read when you're doing 60 or 70 miles an hour on an interstate. What was the fix? Well, the fix was to, in the newer cars, come out with bigger buttons with maybe an LCD multifunctional display above it, so that any one button did a variety of functions depending upon the mode that it was in at the moment. It did one thing for CD, something else for FM, something for AM, and so forth. Again, a reaction. Cell phones keep getting more and more complicated, but again, there's a backlash. There are phones out there that, such as Jitterbug, that people just want to make and receive phone calls. They say, hey, I don't need all this technology. I don't want it. High touch in automobiles. Do you really need a steering wheel for an automobile? I don't think so. You could control it with a little PlayStation type controller, a couple of buttons, all right? But people are used to turning the wheels of the car. Physically, they are not turning the wheels of the car. They're just driving some servos and controls that make the wheels turn. But again, we've gotten used to this high touch aspect, and people want that. Transmissions. Chrysler in the late 50s, early 60s came out with push-button transmissions. Colossal failure. People still like the shifter, even though, again, it doesn't physically move any gears, doesn't physically shift any rods. People like the high touch. Okay, I would ask you to make sure you read the supplemental reading. There's on how failure breeds success. It's called Success, and it's on Moodle. Talks about famous flops and what came of it. You know, learn from your failures. Also talk about niche companies, Netflix, how they clobbered Blockbuster and became very successful. And some of the music movie folks, small independents that are doing well. So again, those 3 supplemental readings. In our next module, we're going to look at product planning, price, and customer service. So please join me in the next module. Thank you.